제 짐불들은 힘이 장zon의 문음 짐불가 겠다. 아그러 단검 전도 실물도 돈바드 제잔라 기좀 자라는 저러 telling 정금선 저러 기준도 일라. 님의 번조 잘라 소라데 공게 도반보를 신기로.
The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings. Let us all give rise to the supreme bodhicitta. Next, we will continue our discussion of the Udāna Sūtra. The Udāna Sutra, an important Buddhist scripture, consists of 4 distinct volumes and a total of 33 individual chapters in all. Currently, we are discussing the second very important chapter, which is specifically the chapter on desire. We may indeed be able to finish the entire chapter on desire today, perhaps even concluding it. There is one more important thing to mention here, and I'd like to make a suggestion. This is for everyone who is currently present here in this session, and also for all those individuals who will listen to this class at a later time. If you are interested in this in any way, I think it's a really good habit to write a diary every single day. Of course, this is not mandatory, and there are no special requirements. It's completely voluntary if you are willing to keep a diary. There's not really much else we can provide you, but for those of you who are definitely here, we certainly can provide each and every single person with a personal notebook. This is definitely not a traditional laptop computer. We can give everyone something, even a small, simple notebook for jotting down various thoughts, and important things will certainly do. Actually, this gesture is quite profoundly meaningful and can have a significant impact. Even if your writing isn't very good at this moment, on one hand, it helps you practice your writing skills. If you can write in Chinese, it's best to write in Chinese, if that's really not possible. Writing in Tibetan should be perfectly fine too, and you really don't have to write a lot every single day. Sometimes you might write more, sometimes a little less. Sometimes your writing might be a bit scattered, perhaps. Even if there's nothing particularly meaningful to record that day. I remember one time when I was writing the other day, I just wrote it like a detailed daily log, meticulously noting that I got up early in the morning, carefully proofread the comprehensive biography of Khenpo Sodargye, and immediately after completing that important task, I translated a bit of the Udāna Sūtra. Then I attended a few meetings. I wrote that one of them was held in the Sutra Hall here, where they discussed the installation of surveillance cameras, and afterwards I had to attend yet another meeting with the Academic Affairs Office about assigning Dharma teachers and counselors to various places. Then, in conjunction with the esteemed Discipline Department, we discussed various important issues regarding female monastics, specifically whether they could be allowed to wear a warmer undershirt inside, and whether permission could be granted for that. Later on, there were some important matters related to Victory Continent that required attention, and then, subsequently, some other additional issues arose with the management committee. Anyway, it truly felt like I attended no less than 5 or even 6 separate meetings in a single, very busy day. After that, in the afternoon, I translated the Treasury of Word and Meaning, and in the evening I lectured on the Udāna Sūtra, as well as the Journey to the West, reflecting on the whole day, that kind of feeling, and so on. Sometimes I add a bit of my own thoughts and experiences and things like that. Typically, I don't record which specific sutras I recite in the morning daily or how I meditate, since these are daily routines and basically don't need to be written down. So it's things like this. It may seem rather dry and uneventful, but in fact, after many years have passed, all the things that have truly happened back then. Personally, over the past several years, for nearly 10 years, I've been recording every day without fail. Back in the days when I used to frequently go out, this included the earlier Journey to the West and other similar works, and so on. Before that, when His Holiness went to Mount Wutai, there were also some scattered notes. In 1997, when His Holiness went to the Han region, for example, to Mount Putuo and Mount Eme, as well as Mount Jizu, there are some detailed records and documentation of these meaningful trips. But later on, I never had the time to organize them properly. So I think all of us here should also just take a look at ourselves. It really doesn't require much time. At first, you might need to think about it for a little bit. But if you honestly record what happened that day, maybe when you reach an old age, you can look back at yourself and see how your diligent study, deep contemplation, and consistent practice were that year, and recall your feelings at that time. It doesn't have to be a lot. Just accumulating bit by bit over time. Sometimes that's truly meaningful. It's not that we necessarily have to do some grand or truly significant things, like spreading the profound Dharma or greatly benefiting all sentient beings, or writing down what kind of realization or state you've achieved in your own practice. These things don't need to be written down, but at the least, if you have some records like this, it might help improve your writing skills. In the beginning, your sentences might not be smooth or coherent, and whether you're writing in Tibetan or Chinese, it can feel very difficult. But as you gradually get used to it, practice makes perfect, and you'll slowly start to improve. You'll find that writing itself becomes meaningful for you, so you can certainly think about it for yourselves. A few years ago, we also wrote some things here, indeed, and some of them were written very well. Some people are still keeping records to this day. Of course, when it comes to writing, it's not enough to just write about what happened. You should also add your own feelings, right? There are two ways to approach this kind of writing. Some people think you don't necessarily have to use a poetic style or have especially beautiful prose. You can simply use plain, everyday language to record things, and that can still be meaningful. You might not realize it now, but 10 or 20 years from now, the life you lived back then in that place will still be very meaningful. In the past, there were some people who went abroad to study, and I encouraged them to keep a record during their 2 or 3 years overseas. It's best to document those experiences. After many years had passed, when they recalled their entire study experience, which teacher taught which class on which day, and how they felt during those lectures. Even just writing down a single sentence that moved you, or while attending a class, noting which particular sentence was especially helpful to you, or some of the things you did that day. Maybe you went a bit overboard or didn't practice patience well enough, or perhaps you failed to guard your sense faculties, write down both the good and the bad aspects. This might have some meaning, but for us the main thing is whether we can persist. That's very important. At first you might be able to write regularly. Some of us keep diaries and can keep it up for 2 or 3 months, but can't stick with it. So in this regard, whether you are monastics or some lay people later on, whoever it is, see if you can develop this habit. It might be beneficial for yourself, especially for those who are students. In the foreseeable future, when you look back and read it, you'll see your entire mindset during that period and the things that happened around you. Over these years, I've experienced all sorts of things at the Institute, sometimes happiness, sometimes suffering. If you record everything every day, after a few years, you won't be able to remember those things at all. But when you look at them, it all seems vividly clear again. There's a certain meaning to it. You can decide for yourselves about this. I'm just making this suggestion. If anyone does really start writing, please let me know when you do. We can take a look at it together then. For example, if we feel a little bit of pressure, that's perfectly acceptable. But if you really start writing, then after a year, you should look back at it. Say you start writing on September 1st, for example, or you begin in 2026. So you start on August 15th, for example. You can first make a draft, that's perfectly fine. Then you can organize it into text yourself. It's very easy to do. You don't need any special writing style for this at all, nor do you need to. Let's continue with the lesson. Now we're discussing the Udāna Sūtra. Which says, those who indulge in enjoyment destroy wisdom and do not seek the next life. With corrupted intentions and desires, they harm themselves and others. This mainly talks about people who are especially greedy and materialistic. They end up harming both themselves and others quite severely, especially those who love money and wealth above all else. Earlier, we mainly talked about greed for people and relationships. Here, it's essentially about greed for material wealth and personal enjoyment. Actually, whether it's enjoyment or money, in a certain and very real sense, it is quite evident that many individuals are truly very eager to seek them. Some people genuinely love money as much as their very own precious lives and desperately want to obtain it at all costs. Someone once said, "I often pray to my revered guru. I pray to my guru to bless me to continually keep making money. But I don't know if it's because the guru isn't blessing me, or for some other reason, but I'm making less and less money." Actually, everyone experiences this kind of situation. If we look at the literal meaning of enjoyment, enjoyment refers to our possessions and wealth. These things actually destroy wisdom and intelligence. They truly ruin the wisdom of foolish people. However, for those who are wise, after they acquire wealth, they use it to make offerings above and give alms below, and do meaningful things, such as engaging in charity and so on. But once foolish people have money, not only does it truly ruin them, but they also completely stop seeking anything beneficial for their future lives. Especially for a monastic or a dedicated practitioner, once they have money, they become so pleased with themselves that they lose all sense of restraint. They become especially arrogant, thinking they're really something special. As mentioned earlier, many people nowadays start to go astray once they have acquired money. Some individuals are ruined by gaining status and power. For practitioners, it's extremely important to consider future lives. But basically, they don't consider it at all. This kind of negative intention is very harmful. Having thoughts and intentions driven by excessive greed is essentially being attached to wealth and material desire. Driven by such powerful greed can truly corrupt one's spirit. They end up ruining themselves as well as others. They destroy themselves too. Their own practice and character are often completely ruined. Others are also harmed by this. Indeed, everyone connected to them ends up suffering in the end. Now, as we can see, there are often reports about certain corrupt officials who may bring harm to their own families, relatives, and friends, and even to many people they come into contact with. It's not them, it includes us practitioners. When I was abroad before, I met a Lama who used to stay at the institute. He was actually doing quite well. So what exactly did he say? He deeply regretted learning a foreign language at that time. Back then he considered himself a good practitioner. But later, after meeting some wealthy people, he ended up accumulating more and more money. He couldn't control his mind. Eventually, after going abroad, he couldn't even truly keep his personal precepts anymore. So if he hadn't encountered all that money back then, and hadn't really come across all of those various external circumstances, you see, he would still be a very good and dedicated monk indeed. He really envied monks who are content and have few desires now. As he spoke, he seemed especially sad. At the time, I tried to comfort him, saying, "Your work in spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings is doing quite well, so just keep working hard." He said, "On the surface, it looks that way, but in reality, I also understand the true state of my own practice. I know very well what my actions are like now. I'm very clear about all my behaviors." That's what he said at the time. So for some people, it's very true that if they encounter some wealth or money, they also ruin their present life and also ruin their future lives, ruin themselves and ruin others as well. On the surface, it may look like they're doing very well, very impressive, but after some time, he won't be able to turn it into a path of practice. In the end, all of his actions will be completely exposed. As for this particular case, at that specific time, there was a very wealthy man who was quite greedy for money. This rich man lived in the city of Shravasti, and his name was Nanda, but he was remarkably stingy. Just how incredibly stingy was he? His house had really 7 layers of doors. He did this to protect his wealth, and he was unwilling to give alms to anyone. Moreover, outside his house was enclosed like a bird cage. He didn't want any birds from outside to come in, so he wouldn't have to give them any alms. There were also small holes in all the walls of his house, but they were all completely sealed up with a thick layer of white clay entirely plastered over. Not even the smallest mice could possibly get in. He was so deeply attached to his considerable wealth, he neither gave alms nor made any offerings. But later he was no longer able to hold on to his precious life and was close to death. When he was dying, he told his son, all the wealth I've accumulated in my lifetime is enough for you to use for 7 generations. You and your descendants for 7 lifetimes can use it. I hope that in the future all this property will not be given to anyone else. Don't make any offerings or give alms to anyone at all. After saying this, he died. After his death, actually, we've talked about this story before. I think it came up briefly in the 4th verse or somewhere around there. But that time it was mentioned only briefly. After he died, he was reborn into a poor family. He was born into poverty and gradually over time ended up begging for a living. He didn't have a single cent to his name and lived a very miserable, truly difficult life. One day he went to the house of his son from his previous life, because that family had always maintained a very stingy, indeed ungenerous attitude. They had a rule that no outsiders were allowed to enter. At that time, the stern gatekeeper would not allow him to enter, and he even broke his entire arm. He was experiencing excruciating pain at that very moment. At that time, the compassionate Buddha saw that the conditions for his spiritual liberation had matured. Then the Buddha came before him and asked, "Are you indeed Nanda?" After asking him several times, he finally admitted it. After he admitted it, Nanda's son, that is to say, his son from his previous life, and the person he had now reincarnated as this miserable man, were both called over together. Then the Buddha spoke to them about the karmic relationships between past and future lives. At that time, his son, deeply moved by the teachings, also took refuge in Buddhism, and the Buddha also explained to them the various faults related to this particular matter, specifically the faults of being stingy and ungenerous. Then the Buddha recited this profound verse. So, in other words, speaking from the perspective of ordinary people, people nowadays are indeed especially attached to material wealth. And even though they themselves have some opportunities, in the end they end up ruining themselves. For example, nowadays there is excessive consumption, including gambling and drug use. These are forms of indulgence, and because of this, people lose control over themselves. If that's not the case, on the absolute contrary, if one is truly very pure and deeply self-disciplined, then no matter where they are, they will undoubtedly live a very happy and fulfilling life. This is from the Sutra of the Buddha's last teachings, right? A contented person, even if lying on the ground, is still at ease and happy. But a discontented person, even if in heaven, will still not be satisfied. So for those who are content, even if a satisfied person sleeps on the ground, he still feels very happy as long as his heart is content. But if the heart is not content, even if you are lying in heaven, you still won't feel happy inside. You may even feel especially sad and dissatisfied. So, speaking of our lives in this world, there really are some people in this world who are always insatiably greedy. As wise people, we basically understand this. Each of us is also a being of the desire realm, indeed. Having food to eat and clothes to wear is the basic requirement. If your living conditions are a bit better and you live a slightly higher quality life, the Buddha did not prohibit this either. In the Vinaya Sutra, the Buddha once indeed said that if you have sufficient means yourself, even living in a grand mansion, one truly worth hundreds of millions, is also permitted. However, if your accumulated wealth is mixed with some form of wrongdoing, then not only is such enjoyment not allowed, but it will also inevitably bring great confusion and distress to both our present circumstances and future lives. So sometimes we can also very clearly see that some people, because their circumstances have improved, after their conditions improve, they start to lose control. Let alone diligently studying, contemplating, and practicing Dharma, they might indulge in a life of pleasure and excess, engaging in all sorts of a variety of illegal activities. So just a few days ago here at our institute, we asked everyone that in another 2 or 3 months, for a student who is attending this institute, it is truly best not to have a private car. Otherwise, some individuals here might choose to purchase very expensive and luxurious cars, or a few people pool together to buy a car. And in such cases, I've heard that, of course, among so many monks, it's quite normal that a very small number of people behave this way. However, many esteemed Khenpos and respected Dharma teachers, in order to carefully protect everyone's budding and developing faith, so when it comes to various external enjoyments, including assets like cars and houses, in these particular aspects, we firstly advise everyone to avoid living a life of excessive luxury as much as humanly possible, if you have this kind of good fortune. Maybe no one can control it, and in the future it may be uncontrollable, but at the least, our academic program basically lasts 15 to 16 years, but authorities are now requiring it reduced to 8 years. But no matter what the circumstances during your academic studies, it's always best to study diligently and wholeheartedly, and live a relatively simple and plain life. That's the right way to do it. Otherwise, like in some universities actually abroad, students are not allowed to drive luxury cars on campus. But there are some rich second-generation and official second-generation students who buy luxury cars outside the campus. Before classes are even just over, they start wandering around everywhere, living all kinds of truly extravagant lives. But then later on, most of them actually end up performing very poorly academically, even though you attend this university, a prestigious one. If you don't truly settle down and diligently study hard during your time there, if you don't calm your mind and focus on your learning, then other diligent students will certainly achieve excellent results and outstanding accomplishments, while those with even better conditions and more advantageous circumstances often end up not doing well academically. Now, in our society, there are also many people like this, including in some schools, where students with poorer backgrounds study especially diligently and solidly, while those with better conditions don't do well academically. What's the reason? It's just as it's said, the wisdom of fools is ruined by indulgence, which destroys both this life and the next, and harms both oneself and others. In the end, even their families have to pay a lot of compensation for them, with all kinds of lawsuits and various situations arising. So if a person truly lives with contentment and few desires, this is a very good form of spiritual practice and also a kind of profound faith. Although some people might say, we're not monastics, or I'm not a Buddhist, but as a person, we should also strive to be more balanced. Don't be extreme or swing to either end. If you are too poor financially and can't manage to survive in life, that is also a kind of suffering. If you are too wealthy, then it becomes meaningless as well. This principle will also be discussed further below. So when we carefully look at this scripture, perhaps in the hearts of many people, we find a deep resonance. Some truths about real life may arise. Most people say that having money is a good thing in today's materialistic society. In fact, that's exactly how most people are thinking nowadays around the world. But those who are truly happy with wealth, maybe there are some, but they are very few. This will also be discussed below. Even if money rains down from the sky, desires are never satisfied. The benefits are truly few, the troubles are indeed many. Wise and discerning people can see this clearly for themselves. In Tibetan it's called Gashaparna, but when translating, it refers to coins, gold coins, or currency. So if you write it all out, it truly seems like there are a significant number of words, but unfortunately there is absolutely no way around it at all.
Gashaparna jicha mashaka arngayan amrova jacha the chuzu jakarko jakarko ngarstrang It seems like there are quite a few different explanations available for this particular topic. In the 50 stanzas on Samanera, it refers to a type of money or currency called Gashabana. Gashabana was a significant form of currency used in ancient India. This particular currency, in other words, meant that there was a rain of gold and silver pouring down in abundance. It's like how we've been experiencing really heavy rainfall in Tibet recently. Imagine that it were money, perhaps like American US dollars or Chinese yuan, constantly pouring down from the sky over and over again. In fact, for ordinary people who truly lack wisdom and insight, their desires still can't be satisfied. Even when such a rain of precious treasures falls, it should be enough to satisfy them, but it still isn't enough. Moreover, the actual benefits derived from this particular kind of wealth are in reality very meager. The advantages one truly gains from it might at most merely allow you to eat well and dress well, and solve your needs for food and shelter. But what it truly brings you, in fact, that's all money really does. What it brings you is first food and shelter. Second, it lets you show off your considerable wealth in front of others. It's just your so-called superficial glory and material wealth, absolutely nothing more than that at all. But in reality, there are many, many serious potential drawbacks. Once you have money, all sorts of issues arise, including having to guard it, worrying about it being stolen by others, and so on. There are all kinds of worries, all kinds of suffering, all kinds of anxieties. There is an especially large amount of suffering. So, a truly wise person understands this profound situation completely. If you are indeed wise, you inherently know that material wealth itself is not really a good thing at all. I think it's mentioned in the A commentary on the aspiration of Sukhavati, isn't it? When the Buddha and Ananda went together, they saw a golden vessel, right? Anyway, they saw some gold. Then the Buddha said, "Oh, a poisonous snake, you should stay away from it." At that time, Ananda said, "Where is the poisonous snake? This is something very precious." In the end, a farmer found it. After he got it, he took it away. After he took it away, someone followed him. They said, "My golden vessel was stolen by you." He was imprisoned by the authorities. The farmer then realized, what the Buddha called a poisonous snake really was a poisonous snake. It looked just like gold, but in reality it was a poisonous snake. So many of us nowadays, the people who are locked up in prison, most of them are there because of financial motivations, whether it's the theft, the practice of embezzlement, or the violent crime of robbery, all driven by the pursuit of money. In all sorts of situations, their entire lives are completely ruined by it. A person's entire life, including most people nowadays, if you look at the news now, some individuals, for example, have embezzled a staggering 200 million, and some individuals are given suspended death sentences. Some really are. Like just the other day, there was someone, how much was it exactly? He used up 800 million or something like that. He was actually sentenced to death on the spot, just like that. So people are sometimes ruined by money. Birds are often completely ruined by food. There's a saying like that in the world, isn't there? So, regarding this story back in those times, the king Rulun, who was also widely known and recognized as King Mandhata, throughout his entire life, his merit and fortune were extraordinarily great. In the distant past, he had offered 7 humble peas to the enlightened Buddha. After some virtuous causes and conditions ripened, he became a powerful wheel-turning king. His exalted status was indeed on par with that of the mighty Indra, the king of the gods. His lifespan was also equal to that of Indra, the king of the gods. He experienced only profound happiness and joy without any suffering whatsoever, but because his deep-seated inner desires were never truly satisfied, he eventually fell to the ground. When he fell to the ground and was about to die, he recited this verse. It seems that at the time, it wasn't described as a rain of money, but even if a rain of the 7 treasures were to fall, desires are never satisfied. Therefore, desires bring about all kinds of problems. The benefits are very minimal indeed. So the wise should truly understand this. That is precisely how this verse came about at that particular time. Also, there is another story said to have taken place in the city of Shravasti. There was someone named Bhoja or something like that. He originally wanted to become a monk, but when it came to ordination, he just couldn't do it. He was never able to let go of his money and treasures. Because of this, his desires were particularly strong. Later, the Buddha, this verse and the following verse, these 2 verses, the Buddha also spoke them due to such a circumstance at that particular time. There is also this version of the story. So in this intricate and complex world, no matter how substantial the amount of money you possess might be, it might not actually hold significant meaning or provide true value to you. Of course, if you have absolutely no money at all, then life can indeed be a little bit difficult. But if you do have some money, no matter how much more you actually have, even more than you had before, for example, whether you have 1 million, 2 million, or 3 million, it basically becomes just a concept. There isn't really any real truly tangible benefit. In fact, it might even bring you a significant amount of trouble. There was once a man in America. He seemed to be involved in the construction business, and he fortunately won the lottery. When he won the lottery, he was undoubtedly ecstatic. I think it was around 2002. At that particular point in time, he got approximately $300 million, a substantial sum of money. After paying taxes on the $300 million, he ended up with approximately $100 million. But after he acquired it, he started acting quite crazy. He bought private jets, luxurious yachts, and gambled excessively. A lot of people are like this nowadays. As long as they have money, nothing else matters. I've heard that in some places people dig for caterpillar fungus, and if they get a few 100,000 yuan, they immediately go to the city to gamble and eat hot pot. That's just small money. And then for the big money, nowadays many incredibly wealthy and affluent people start buying luxurious yachts and private jets, and then engage in all kinds of illegal activities. In the very end, including himself and his entire family members, they all suffered. His family was ruined and lives were lost. In the end, he said, "Oh, when I won the lottery back then, why didn't I just tear up the ticket? If I had torn it up, I wouldn't be facing such misery now." So sometimes people simply can't see it at the time. It really looks like he truly became rich overnight, and when he got so much, he was overjoyed. But things didn't turn out that way in the end. In ancient Greece, you might have heard of this historical fact too. In ancient Greece, there once was a powerful and renowned king who specifically went to worship the gods. When he earnestly prayed, he greatly wished for ample money. He truly desired substantial wealth. The god granted him the power of the Midas touch. With this Midas touch, truly anything he touched would turn into gold. The king was extremely happy. At first, no matter what he touched, it would immediately turn into gold. But in the end, everything he tried to eat or wear all turned into gold. For example, when he tried to eat a steamed bun, as soon as he touched it, it turned into a piece of gold. And when his clothes touched him, they also turned into gold. Even the people he loved most, everything around him, completely transformed into solid gold. At that point, he became extremely miserable. He used to love gold very much, but now it was unbearable. With everything turned to gold for him, he couldn't even function properly anymore at all. So he desperately begged the powerful god to stop this terrible situation from happening immediately. And the god eventually took back his magical power. Although there are many such fascinating legends in ancient Greece, maybe things like this really did happen. We might also have similar legends in Tibetan history. There are indeed some similar stories as well from various cultures. So, even if it were to rain down the 7 precious treasures all day long continuously, if we ourselves do not possess a good way to make use of them, we might not be happy either. So some of us think, oh, it's fine. If I had money, things would definitely be good. Even though we've talked about many drawbacks, having money is definitely not a bad thing. You can do all sorts of things with it. Maybe that's what people think. But perhaps in actual reality, immense wealth often brings with it a significant amount of worries and numerous considerable troubles. Nowadays, even in some of our monasteries, if the monastery's income is decent or even just average, the practitioners there probably don't have to worry about food or clothing. That's still pretty good. But if there's too much money, there are also all kinds of significant problems that come along with it. I won't go into all the intricate details, but there are many pressing issues, including buying cars, frequently going out for entertainment, and so on and so forth and the like. Monasteries are like this too. So nowadays, some people who don't really like Buddhism, if something happens in a certain monastery, even if it's minor, they talk about Buddhism every day. But actually, that's not the case. If we look at it properly, among Buddhists, there are both ordinary people and sages. As for ordinary people, before they attain first Bhumi Bodhisattva, even if they've reached path preparation or accumulation, they still have worldly concerns. They still have defilements to abandon. So, on certain occasions, they deliberately employ various means to initiate the suppression of Buddhism, its monasteries, and its profound teachings. In reality, there are indeed certain other underlying reasons that contribute to this situation. I think it's really like this, because the whole human world is a very complex and intricate community. No matter how good or well-intentioned a group we claim to be, some challenges and problems will inevitably arise and manifest themselves within that particular group. This is a very normal phenomenon. It's not just Buddhism. I think other religions as well. If the truly ugly and undesirable aspects were magnified, I genuinely don't believe there wouldn't be any such instances. However, it is quite possible that some religions might indeed be considerably more powerful and influential, including the fact that related media might not necessarily expose them. Even if they are exposed, it's only for a very short time, just a brief flash, and then it's gone. Because when it comes to Buddhism, we talk about practicing the 4 ascetic principles, right? Practicing not hitting back when others hit me, not cursing back when others curse me, not getting angry when others get angry at me. When others expose my faults, I don't expose theirs. They understand. The media knows that if I say I'm a Buddhist, I practice the 4 ascetic principles, even if they curse me, I wouldn't curse them back. Then they meticulously look for our various faults and imperfections and might even magnify them 100 times over in all sorts of conceivable and imaginative ways. But we are clear-minded and possess a discerning perspective. We still truly know what the actual reason is. Actually, even now, including on the internet, there are some people who are very rational, not just blindly following what others say, not just echoing others' opinions. They still have their own principles and are basically able to analyze all the relationships from every angle, inside and out, top to bottom, and all the various connections. They can sort out some of the logic, but there are some people, when one dog is barking wildly, loudly, and uncontrollably, the other dogs, hearing the commotion, instinctively join in and contribute to the cacophony, barking loudly as well. This phenomenon is something we are all too intimately familiar with. For us, for many things, especially for Buddhists. Indeed, sometimes, if we look at it from a worldly perspective, because if Buddhists are studying Mahayana Buddhism and practicing patience, there are some unique aspects to it. But in such a challenging environment, these individuals are very often subjected to bullying treatment. This unfortunate situation includes some of us who are Mahayana Buddhists, those who have taken refuge when they go to school while they are studying. Many of the other children around them often tend to bully them quite a bit because they don't fight back. They do very well in studies according to Mahayana Buddhist thinking. They are indeed practicing well. But the people around them too, they have already gotten used to bullying those who are weaker, bullying those individuals who do not dare to fight back or defend themselves. This is also a kind of established and often unwritten rule within society. Although this rule doesn't align with the truth, but there's just nothing we can do about it. That's just how reality is. Many people like those who are strong and powerful, and those who are wealthy. They like to associate with people of higher status and so on. There are truly all kinds of many complex phenomena in this very world. We still need to keep our eyes open. We should analyze things from multiple perspectives. This is also very necessary. So what exactly is coming up next? Is this part completely finished now? Even the fleeting pleasures of the heavenly realms do not bring true, lasting joy. The Buddha's devoted disciples, the Shravakas, find genuine happiness by diligently extinguishing all desire. As for this part, it states that the profound happiness of the heavenly realms, the immense happiness of celestial beings, is, of course, something truly remarkable. Although we haven't personally experienced it, perhaps we were once reborn in those glorious heavenly realms and taste that exquisite bliss before, but now we can't remember clearly. But through various treatises and sacred scriptures, we know that the life of celestial beings is extremely blissful. And it's not just in Buddhism. Other religions also describe the heavenly realms quite extensively. So, in some religions it states that after death one either falls into a fiery hell or ascends to a glorious heaven. So this kind of happiness in the heavenly realms, actually there's nothing to be particularly delighted about. Because when you truly look for the essence of happiness, when you try to find it, it's also like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow, without any real substance. So there's really nothing there either. If we don't even feel joy for the happiness of the heavenly realms, then as for the happiness in the human world, or the happiness of the asuras, there's even significantly less reason to truly envy or desperately cling to those things. If we don't even cling to the happiness of the human world, then among the animals, hell beings and hungry ghosts, the 6 realms, there's nothing worth being greedy for either. So this kind of pleasure, born from desire, in fact, even with all sorts of delightful enjoyments in the heavenly realms, if you carefully look at the heavens, there's abundant food, refreshing drink, and captivating entertainment. Everything you could want, nothing is lacking, and there is an abundance of it all. But this is nothing more than just a temporary amusement, a fleeting diversion. Other than that, it has no real substance or lasting value. So this kind of happiness is truly not worth craving or pursuing. So what is the only thing that's truly worthwhile and enduring? It is that Buddhas, as well as the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, eliminate this kind of attachment. In the 12 links of dependent origination, there is always present a kind of craving or desire, a fundamental yearning, a deep-seated craving. And if these cravings are extinguished, then that is something to truly rejoice in. Only Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, whether Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Shravakas or Pratyeka Buddhas, they know, and their way of thinking is quite different from that of ordinary worldly people. Their general attitude toward worldly pleasures and the pursuit of such things is also distinct, may temporarily involve similar feelings, then this is something that everyone definitely experiences. For example, when people in the world acquire wealth, or experience satisfaction between the opposite sexes, these are all things that can be accepted. But in reality, there is nothing truly worth being attached to or craving. There was once a foreign journalist, a well-known figure, I saw a video about it, who once asked a revered Rinpoche saying, "You monastics have renounced all the things we enjoy in the world. All these pleasures of life, isn't it truly painful? Can you really endure such a thing?" That's precisely what was said at the time. Then this great master wisely replied, "If our body truly itches, scratching it certainly brings a bit of temporary pleasure indeed. But if your body doesn't itch at all, isn't that even better?" He answered, using some of the reasoning from Nagarjuna's precious garland, drawing on those principles. So, whether it's truly wise people, good practitioners, they do not rely on worldly, contaminated and ultimately fleeting pleasures to satisfy their own senses. Although they do acknowledge that in the realm of conventional appearances and deluded phenomena, for example, eating well, dressing well, or watching shows today, these things are a kind of relative happiness, and this is not denied. But is there any truly real and genuinely significant substance behind it all? There isn't. So regarding this particular verse, it is said that in the distant past there once was a venerable bhikshu, monk, who began to meditate, and while he was meditating, there was a poisonous snake under his meditation cushion. Then the snake bit the monk's body, and in the end he died. After he died, because of his meditation practice, he was reborn in the heaven of the 33 gods. When he was reborn in the heaven of the 33, many heavenly maidens came to welcome him. At that moment, the monk still didn't realize that he had already died. He began to say, "I am a humble bhikshu. I cannot have any contact with you women." Later, the heavenly maidens deliberately showed him a shiny mirror. The mirror of the gods clearly reflected his own image. At that moment, when the monk looked, he saw that his body had already changed into that of a celestial being, including the heavenly crown on his head. And the celestial garments he was wearing, everything had already transformed into that of a deva. At that moment, he became extremely sad. Then he cried out loudly, saying, "I have already given up my identity as a bhikshu." He had already been reborn in the heavenly realm. After that, he was very sad. Every single day, he diligently began to meditate peacefully in the serene garden. Later, he died there, and after his passing there, he was reborn in the human world. When he came to the human world, he had this virtuous root from childhood. After growing up, he went to pay respects to the Buddha, In front of the Buddha, he said, although I was reborn in the heavenly realm, the happiness in the heavenly realm ultimately just only leads to falling into the lower realms. He realized that there is absolutely nothing truly reliable or inherently stable about it. So he humbly asked the Buddha if he could teach him a profoundly meaningful and direct path to achieve ultimate liberation. At that very significant moment, the Buddha also recited this profound and insightful verse. As we have previously mentioned in several other narratives and accounts, the Buddha at that specific moment in time transported Nanda to the celestial and divine heavenly realm, and later took him to hell as well. There was a special empty cauldron waiting for Nanda to come down and be tormented there in that very place. At this very moment, he became afraid once again and developed a truly sense of renunciation. Therefore, a true and dedicated spiritual practitioner may not feel any joy or satisfaction over the fleeting wealth and pleasures of this earthly life. They won't develop a profound sense of genuine delight and true satisfaction in them. Not to mention all these superficial and fleeting things in the modern world today. Indeed, in this vast and complex world, it is truly evident. On one hand, everyone is pursuing something. Some are after money, while others are pursuing various other things. Indeed, really. All individuals are constantly seeking genuine happiness, but this relentless pursuit of happiness is truly just very, very superficial. Take Steve Jobs, for example, right? In his autobiography, he said that money can only change the surface of a person's life. True happiness depends on one's own mind. As for him, indeed, it seems he doesn't have a strong Buddhist background, nor is he an accomplished practitioner. But through meditation and through some subtle self-observation, perhaps he also realized that even though he had acquired so much worldly wealth, in the very end he still uttered these profound words. I truly think that's actually quite meaningful and significant. Indeed, when it comes to the subject of money, it can only solve a certain part of our life's essential needs, especially the superficial ones. So for most people in the world, their understanding isn't very deep. They think that food, clothing, or any external contact is what they truly need. It can bring them a kind of truly lasting happiness. But in reality, that's not the case. At first glance, it's like looking at a beautiful rainbow. It seems truly meaningful. But when you actually try to find its essence, it's just like chasing a rainbow, or like analyzing a banana tree. There's no real substance to be found. So sometimes when we just simply study in this way, when we analyze things like this, we feel more and more that what the Buddha said is absolutely true, without a doubt. But still, for many of us, it's just not truly possible to reach such a profoundly deep state. Even though what is being discussed here is only about the inherent faults of sensual pleasures and not as profoundly significant as the ultimate meaning of emptiness, if we can understand even this much, that's quite good, isn't it? Now, there are millions of people in the world who are muddling through every day, chasing after fame and fortune, pursuing material gain. This world is becoming more and more like this, especially now, when wealth and resources are increasingly hard to obtain, and the global economy keeps declining. In such a special time as this, people's desires are becoming increasingly impossible to fully satisfy. This is especially and very frightening at this particular moment. Perhaps your deepest desires and what you actually end up getting in reality are quite far apart and significantly different. In this particular situation, people are living in very deep water and scorching fire every single day, and they are especially unhappy with their lives. Because of your desires, nowadays many people say, I still haven't achieved my dreams. Actually, your dreams sound very nice when you talk about them, but your desires are enormous. Especially now, what do many people actually tend to look at these days? They watch all kinds of media, including live stream shopping. Especially during live stream sales, they have a certain pattern, a whole set of tactics. They say this product is extremely cheap, and now there are only a very few remaining. If you don't buy it now, it'll be gone truly quickly soon. A lot of people think, wow, that's really true. The quality is so really good too, and it's so truly cheap. If I don't buy it, then, plus if I buy one, they'll give me several more for free. Actually, this is simply just a way for them to make a living. I'm not saying they're wrong, but in the whole business world, if you understand, you'll think, oh, right. Today there are only 1 or 2 left as well. Back when we used to go shopping, there was an elderly old man who was always there. When I was in school, he would carefully take out a fresh pair of white shoes every single day, and then he'd say, "Hey there, students, hurry up and buy. I only have this 1 pair of white shoes left, you know. Today it's really cheap, tomorrow it'll be gone." A lot of students would start buying them. Then the very next day there would be another pair exactly the same, still readily available. So this kind of live selling isn't something entirely new. Back in the 70s and 80s, we already saw it. Even though back then it wasn't like it is now, with everyone constantly saying, "Family, family, and babies, babies." Please type 666222 or 111 in the chat. Actually, a lot of this is going on behind the scenes. I think for some of us practitioners, monastics, if we're immersed in this kind of thing every day, on one hand, it's a waste of time. And on the other hand, it increases our desires. Don't you think so? So now in many places, including temples and some practice centers, it seems like they're buying all sorts of things from outside, ordering deliveries. As this becomes more and more common, it definitely affects one's spiritual practice. And this shows that behind it all, a lot of people are paying attention to this. The more people focus on it, the more scattered their minds become. Yesterday, I went to a practice center near us. Most of them there are true practitioners. Although they don't really understand all the various different phenomena in society, they seem to have gained a great deal of inner wealth and personal fulfillment. So sometimes from people's outward attitudes and their general demeanor, you can indeed observe certain significant things. Now, their way of life is a bit different from the rules of big city living. There may indeed be some very slight differences, but their true inner wealth should be quite abundant. They have mastered quite a lot. So even among the same group of people, you can clearly see that some individuals have gained different kinds of significant wealth. Perhaps in the near future, we will become more and more vulnerable to the various temptations of the world. That is all we can possibly do.
Ganjandana nyamba yirsir ki ro yojir jang norti chik jang matsambar tobar kila lagbar jut.
Even if you have a truly immense mountain of gold as vast and imposing as a snowy mountain range, it is not enough to satisfy a single person's desires. Understanding this, one should promptly engage in virtuous deeds. Even if you possess gold as massive as an entire mountain, an enormous and substantial amount of gold, as much as a snowy mountain, like the Gangdai's snow mountain or Mount Gonga. A snowy mountain is formed by layers upon layers of snow accumulating over time, so it's extremely vast. Even now, still in the snowy, vast regions of Tibet, because the Buddha actually used snowy mountains as a metaphor. Nowadays, many prominent historians widely believe that the Buddha once came to the ancient land of Tibet. And the only reason for this belief, he often used snowy mountains as metaphors. Many of these references to snowy mountains actually point to the Gangdai snow mountain here. This is one such reference. There's also the Lake of No Afflictions. The Lake of No Afflictions is also located next to the Gangdai mountains today. There really is such a lake. So in some Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha also uses the metaphor of snowy mountains, referring to this place. There are also metaphors involving the Lake of No Afflictions. It's the same idea. So there's a saying that the Buddha also visited these snowy mountains and snowy regions. This is one such theory. So here the Buddha says, even if you possess an enormous amount of precious gold, if you have gold as vast as a towering snowy mountain, you still won't be truly content. It won't satisfy even a single person's deepest desires. A person's desires can never be fully satisfied, let alone when it comes to many people, if there are many people. For example, if we have 100 people, if there are 100 people, and each person has as much as a snowy mountain, you still might not be satisfied. Truly, if people are not content, sometimes when I see people in the city, some of them are wealthy and prosperous, especially those who are extremely rich, but they are never satisfied. They're saying, now I need to earn this much money, and now I need to invest this much. When they keep talking like this, I wouldn't dare say anything to their face. Oh, sometimes you have to go along with it. Your ambitions are great. The more you earn, the better. This is also beneficial to society, and it's good for you personally as well. Sometimes we have no choice but to go along with it, since there's no need to offend anyone. Some Dharma friends, though, like to offend others. They say whatever comes to mind right away. Actually, that's not good. You should go along with it. Unless it's absolutely necessary, there's no need to criticize others, especially of you who have studied logic. As soon as you see something a little unreasonable, you immediately scold them. There's really no need for that. It's better to just go along with them. Yes, yes, yes. If you earn even more money, some elderly people will say, if I earn this much more, or after I live for this many more years, we can basically see through this. So what does that mean? If a person can't even be satisfied themselves, how could they possibly be satisfied with anything else? So after you understand this principle, you should still truly do your very best to practice virtuous deeds indeed. Now regarding this, the Buddha was living in the city of Shakya at that particular time. Shakyamuni Buddha at that time was residing in a certain town. At that particular time, it is quite possible that the revered Buddha had not yet left his home to become a monk. During that specific period, when he was known as the esteemed Prince Yicheng, or more widely recognized as Prince Gautama, the prince began to ponder and reflect profoundly, thinking to himself, if I were to become king, I might end up killing or encouraging others to kill, and create a lot of negative karma. So at that time he was unwilling to become king. Later, a powerful and menacing demon king came forth and said to the young prince, it would be best if you used your own supernatural powers to obtain the throne. That would be very good. At that time, the prince said to him, you evil one, what do you truly mean by this statement? What is the real meaning behind what you are saying? Then the demon king said, I once personally heard this profound teaching in front of a Buddha. When I was listening to the Dharma, the Buddha clearly said that if a person possesses the 4 bases of spiritual power, with these 4 bases of spiritual power, one can indeed obtain the throne, and also acquire wealth as vast as a mountain of gold. Some of the Tibetan translations have slight differences in wording, but the meaning should be like this. He would obtain wealth like a mountain of gold. So you should pursue the 4 bases of spiritual power. The demon king kept having this kind of conversation with him. At that particular time, the Buddha, the prince, also fully understood what he was talking about. Later, whether it was to effectively subdue other sentient beings or strictly according to his own established principles, it is described here. So even if you possess immense wealth, like a truly towering mountain of pure, glistening gold, or as vast as a snowy mountain, the human heart is truly never fully satisfied, and it consistently yearns to pursue even more. Isn't that precisely how we, as individuals in this vast and complex world, inherently are? If you have 10,000, you want 1,000,000. If you have 1,000,000, you want 10 million. If you have 10 million, then you want 100 million. So usually you can't see this in front of poor people, but when you interact with the wealthy, you realize that human desire is truly insatiable. A cow, for instance, may drink from 1,000 different rivers, yet it only ever needs enough water to adequately fill its own belly. No more and no less. A bird, even though it may perch in 10,000 different trees throughout its life, ultimately only occupies a single branch to rest at night. What profound meaning can we derive from it? For instance, let's consider the example of a yak. It may drink water from many 1,000 rivers, from 1,000 small streams. But no matter how much water it actually drinks, what does it actually and truly need to accomplish its purpose? Just enough to fill its stomach, a single yak's belly. Even if there is an enormous amount, even if 1,000 rivers are right beside you, you can only drink so much. And as for birds like sparrows, crows, as for these, they may dwell among thousands upon thousands of trees. In a vast forest, you could sleep anywhere. But when it comes time to actually sleep at night, it's only on a tiny branch. No matter how much a person owns, they can only possess this much. Beyond that, there's nothing you can do, truly. Just like just the other day when His Holiness really talked about Rockefeller, he was truly the richest man in all of America at that particular time. He was indeed quite remarkable. And he also did a great deal of good in terms of his charitable endeavors. He even founded the prestigious University of Chicago, which I have previously visited. His numerous photos are posted everywhere there, and he also established the Rockefeller University. Following this, he also contributed to other esteemed institutions like Harvard and MIT as well. He funded all of these. He was extremely wealthy. He was known as the oil king of the world at that time. But as he accumulated more and more money, he personally felt that he himself even said that the more money he made, the greater the profound pain in his heart became. In the end, all of his vast wealth was used for various charitable causes. Even now, several generations of his family have continued to pass down this considerable wealth. There's a well-known saying in the world that significant wealth doesn't typically last beyond 3 generations. After 3 generations, it seems that wealth may not last. But the Rockefeller family appears to be different. Even now, they are still involved in many charitable and public welfare activities. They are all engaged in these efforts. So according to their particular perspective, no matter how incredibly wealthy a person truly is, it's still very much like this. So sometimes, when we encounter some especially wealthy people, at night they still only sleep on one bed. Other than that, there's nothing more they can do. No matter how rich they eat 3 meals a day, maybe those 3 meals are better than average. But even if he eats more, he can't eat that much. His stomach is just like that of an ordinary person. When it comes to clothing, some wealthy people aren't even that overweight. They're actually quite slim. So sometimes we think, wow, he has billions and billions, and we end up worrying on his behalf. But he himself isn't worried, right? Oh dear, what will he do with so much money? What will happen when he dies? Actually, these worries are unnecessary, aren't they? So that's what's being talked about here as well. Even if you possess a truly immense mountain of gleaming gold, in the very end, when it comes to what you can fully enjoy, it's just a little bit at a time. Other than that, there's really nothing more. And these wealthy people, they often have to take sleeping pills because they can't sleep well at night. They're carrying these pills with them all day long. But poor people are quite different. Like beggars at the crossroads, they are often overlooked. Sometimes they sing really beautiful songs. And as people get wealthier and wealthier, they basically stop enjoying singing. They have a lot of psychological pressure and so many worries. And the more they think about it, the worse they sleep and eat. That's just how it is. So sometimes when we really look deeply into the lives of those who are truly wealthy in society, it's actually not such a happy thing. That's why more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha explained the intricate concept of wealth so thoroughly and comprehensively in such vivid and compelling detail. So sometimes we, as individuals, when others speak ill of the Buddha or criticize him, we do not intentionally rush to refute them. Even then, we remain calm. Nor do we try to immediately dispel their wrong views or misconceptions. But we also understand that they are indeed immersed in another kind of cultural perspective. This is something we should be absolutely clear about. We should truly recognize and understand these principles ourselves. Therefore, we shouldn't allow ourselves to become too bewildered.
Gangtag dungar deyi girshi ba dedag namyang dodlag gaman yir jikten tagna zingir girshi ne dedag dirshi ftamba slopr shida ftamba di ftamba de sango kusongzir de ftamba keba go ja gangapna di dinjera gna ja kartsavi na da ftamba zikyor di chance sangwa ji de zikki poyin zare de dedag dirshi dedag dirshi ftamba slopr
Those who understand the cause of suffering will never crave worldly pleasures. Desire is the root of all suffering in the world. The wise teach this to everyone. To understand the cause of suffering, to understand the cause of pain, because karma and afflictions are the causes of suffering, such a person will never be attached to fleeting worldly pleasures. This is because these worldly pleasures are what ultimately destroy you. They bind you, and they inevitably bring you profound suffering. So, for someone who is truly wise, they will not be attached to these worldly pleasures. Desire is the root of all suffering in the world, because these cravings or desires, in fact in this world, the most severe thing that truly stimulates your senses, including what is thoroughly explained in the commentaries, such as various cattle, cherished loved ones, wealth, and elephants. These things may indeed seem very good on the surface. It looks like you have a car, you have a house, you have property, you have so much. It all seems very good on the surface, indeed. But actually, there's no special significance to it. Therefore, the wise, the truly wise people, in order to subdue those who are heavily burdened by desire, started teaching that all sensual pleasures are not very meaningful or profound in their essence. In the revered text known as the Praise of the Acts of the Buddha, which is widely considered to be authored by the esteemed Bodhisattva Ashvaghosha, it clearly states craving and other various afflictions, as well as the diverse negative karmic actions that arise from them. These are indeed the causes of suffering. They are the very causes of pain. If you truly abandon them, all suffering will certainly cease. So, if we truly and deeply understand craving, anger, and all these various afflictions, these mental states, as well as all kinds of karma, when we truly observe them with wisdom, they are the actual causes of suffering indeed. If, just as mentioned earlier, one truly understands with the wisdom eye of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or if we as practitioners truly and deeply understand the fundamental causes of suffering, then inevitably suffering will indeed cease. When we know this truth, it's like recognizing a thief. If it's a thief, no matter how eloquently he speaks, we will recognize him. Afterwards, we won't be harmed by him anymore. Therefore, as dedicated practitioners and as devoted monastics, we should consistently and diligently practice our spiritual path with unwavering commitment, understand the faults of sensual pleasures, and understand the faults of wealth. This is very important. Otherwise, most people really truly don't actually know. They think having money is great, having wealth is wonderful. They are completely influenced by today's internet and society, and also by the general public opinion. In this way, therefore, in the end, when you reach old age, maybe then you'll finally truly see things much more clearly. So, I often think to myself, although in this life we observe all kinds of very successful people, among all these successful people, it's not because I'm praising myself due to my image as a monastic, but truly, those who are genuinely happy now are the monastics. The life of a monastic is carefree and without worries. On top of that, the things they do are very meaningful both in this life and the next. If you really look for the happiest person, I personally think I am the happiest. There was a book before by Mingyur Rinpoche. The English version of his book is not this title, but when we translated it into Chinese, it became The Happiest Person. Actually, Westerners, when they observe from the perspective of the Bible and many other sources, say that he is the happiest person. It's just that the author wrote it this way. In fact, it's not just that he is the happiest person. I truly believe that any monastic individual who genuinely understands even a little bit of the profound teachings of the Buddha should undoubtedly be the happiest and most content person. Moreover, we always have in our daily lives the mindset of being content with little desire. And on top of that, we have the blessings of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, as well as the support of our teachers, never separated from their blessings and protection. For people like this, even when they encounter great difficulties and suffering, they still receive this kind of essential care. That particular day, was it June 22nd or so, one of the revered Khenpos at the monastery in my hometown, I won't mention his name, otherwise if he becomes famous, he'll receive too many offerings and that will become a burden for him. At that time, he was quite ill, and when he was being examined in Chengdu, they said his stomach was in very bad shape and he needed major surgery. Later, I thought to myself, he really is a very good person. I told him, maybe Chengdu isn't necessarily the best place for you. There's another place where I had my stomach surgery. I suggested he go there instead. Then he went and stayed for a day. It really had to be done that day because he first checked at Huaxi Hospital in Chengdu, and the results showed that his stomach condition was very serious, and surgery is absolutely necessary. In that case, over there, just a symbolic checkup would suffice. Then he sent me a message in the morning saying that he had a very vivid dream of his revered root guru last night. At first, when he saw his spiritual guide in the dream, he asked for some essential guidance regarding his personal spiritual practice. But the guru didn't talk to him about practice. Later, he found himself lying in the guru's arms, and the guru suddenly turned into a tall man dressed in white, a doctor. This doctor began to perform a gastroscopy on him. While it was being done, it was extremely painful. He woke up from the pain, and after waking up, his stomach was still hurting quite badly, he said. He then told me, I had this rather vivid dream today. At that particular time, I said, "It must surely be your guru's profound and benevolent blessing. There probably won't be any problem. It should be fine." Then, later in the afternoon, when they eventually went to the very large hospital for a comprehensive real checkup, they discovered that there was absolutely nothing wrong with his stomach at all. When they checked again in the afternoon, there was nothing at all. Then he sent me yet another message, saying, "I truly don't have any illness anymore. I can certainly be discharged tomorrow." I said, "It must have been your esteemed guru who completely finished the surgery for you. It's really quite remarkably good. And this isn't just, just bragging to each other. It's just real. If you don't believe it," I still have our entire conversation saved on my phone. Then, the very next day, he bought a plane ticket and immediately came back. So, sometimes I personally and deeply feel that the true and profound blessings of the three jewels are utterly incredible, manifesting in such unexpected and powerful ways. Even if we encounter some difficulties, no matter in what aspect, if we truly have faith ourselves and are in tune with the Guru and the three jewels, even when we're at the lowest point in our lives, we will still receive help in unseen ways. Of course, not everyone will experience this kind of response. But in some real situations, people who don't have faith now, some materialists may not acknowledge it. But it's fine if they don't acknowledge it. In today's world, there are plenty of things that people don't acknowledge. So, it is important that we should also carefully observe these important matters. Whenever the steadfast one speaks of taming sentient beings, the cause of suffering refers to things like desire, and these must also be eliminated. That is the end of chapter 2. We'll stop here.
Bandharangara Badna Sodargye Bandharangara Badna Sodargye Bandharangara Badna Sodargye